Hi, everybody. I'm Daniel Breton. I am the president and CEO of Electric Mobility Canada, which is the Canadian EV Industry Association with members ranging from cars to trucks to bus to off-road vehicle manufacturers to ships even now, utilities, infrastructure providers, manufacturers, mining companies, research centers, universities, cities. Basically, we're the big hub for everything electric in the country.
Okay, Iga.
Yes, hi, good morning. I'm Iga Hallberg. I'm the Vice President of Business Development and Partnerships for Gage Zero. We are an infrastructure developer for medium and heavy duty vehicles. We just happen to be Austin, Texas based, but we are a national organization developing charging hubs, and we are a charging as a service company. And we'll get into that a lot more a little bit later on.
All right, Chris.
Hi, yes, thank you. My name's Chris Campbell. I'm with a company called EO Charging. It's a London-based company. About a year ago, we did move to the U.S. Primarily at our core, we're a technology company developing CMS and energy management solutions, and have worked with some of the companies like Amazon and DHL and UPS abroad in some fairly sizable locations. And because of that, we've had to develop some pretty strong operations and management tools to ride alongside of our technology. So excited to bring that and some of the experiences from across the pond to the discussion today.
Thanks. So level set. Environmental Defense Fund is here, and this is the easiest stat that I think I would share today. You would have to replace 100 passenger vehicles to reach the equivalent reduction in pollution as removing one heavy-duty truck. So when we are looking at the impact for climate, we want to remove those 18-wheelers from roads. Refuse trucks, garbage trucks is 26 times. School buses have a huge impact. But these heavy-duty trucks are the fastest way to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, NOx, particulate matter, and other pollutants from our air. So Environmental Defense Fund focuses that here in Texas and around the country. I'd like to ask y'all, just to kind of start off, tell me something, I guess, about the work you're doing specifically in the heavy-duty truck space, and just, what you'd like to share to start off, and I'll kind of wrap up after that. Iga.
Sure, happy to. So our company was founded approximately 2 years ago. Majority of us come from large renewable energy utility scale projects. So we saw massive growth in the solar and wind industry back in the mid-2000s through an introduction of very interesting financial products and programs. And we have seen very similar application of those to the transportation sector. And to put things very, just to level set, we're very, very early in the electrification journey of medium and heavy duty vehicles. We know that there are millions of, 36 million commercial vehicles registered in the US today. Class 8 vehicles are about 10% of that. So we don't have a lot of electric trucks, and again, when we talk trucks, we're talking, 18-wheelers, right? The equivalent of, I'm presuming everybody here, if you're here, you probably know exactly what we're talking about. We're starting to see examples of success in states like California. It just so happens that Gage Zero is based here in Texas. We have seen the growth of the renewable energy sector outpace other states in Texas for a whole bunch of reasons. And Phillip and I, and we've all had a lot of conversations about what it's going to take to see things develop differently in the state of Texas than in the state of California. And again, we're doing projects throughout the rest of the country, have seen incredible progress in states that, all around the coast, which are adopting various versions of ACF and ACT. But where we feel very passionate is the opportunity to make an impact in the state of Texas. So I'll leave it at that. We'll come back to that later.
Chris.
Yeah, I can maybe give you one example, again, from a large client across the Europe and UK market. Over there, space is a premium, right? And there's not a lot of opportunities to build out a lot of charging infrastructure, especially around their depots. And so we're having to bridge that by building off some off-site trucking hubs for their middle mile services. And so that's bringing the infrastructure there, but also they don't want to fill up they don't have enough to fill up the entire site. So it's about making them the sort of the anchor tenant, and then bringing in some other tenants, whether it be for overnight charging or pull-through charging.
Yeah.
So at EMC, when we're talking about medium and heavy-duty vehicles, a lot of work is being done by what we call our medium and heavy-duty working group. We have a good number of members, one of which is right here, Shayna, from 7Gen. But we also have truck manufacturers who are members of EMC, and bus manufacturers and school bus manufacturers. So when we're talking MHDV, depending on what type of vehicle you're talking about, it's a very different target. From a school bus to a truck to a medium or heavy duty, 18-wheeler, very different game. So we are doing a lot of research and advocacy to make sure that when we talk to government and we talk to industry, they understand what we're talking about. Because let's face it, there is so much education that needs to be done with elected officials, to say the least, and bureaucrats even, because this is a new game. I've been in that space for more than a quarter of a century. So where we are with trucks and buses is where we were with cars 10, 15 years ago. When it comes to education, when it comes to infrastructure. We also have a utilities working group, and Michael Wenslaff, which is another one of our members from BC Hydro, is part of that group, because we have to make the connection between the MHDVs and the utilities. And we also have another group called the Infrastructure to Grid Working Group, which we are working with the federal government on this, because we could install many, many chargers, but they have to be connected to the grid. We need to see how much equipment you need, how much staff needs to install these chargers, what's going to be the demand, what kind of load it means depending on what time of the day. We are lucky in Canada because 84% of our electricity production is either renewable or zero emission. So we have, I would say we're in a more advanced than most countries in the world, but we still have work to do. And because we're very aggressive on our ambition to make the grid zero emission by 2035, that's aggressive. Yeah. We have to make sure that we can sustain the transition to a medium and heavy duty vehicles.
You mentioned these working groups. That's one thing here in Texas. We actually just completed work. The Texas Department of Transportation had an interagency task force that included our Public Utility Commission, ERCOT, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, the Texas Commission for Environmental Quality, Texas Department of Licensing and Regulation, the Texas Transportation Institute, which is housed at a university a couple hundred miles away, a college town called College Station. We don't talk about that here on this campus. We've got a number of groups, including EPRI, which helped contribute to that, and it ended up being a 51-page report where we kind of did this analysis. It was a little bit book report, what's going on around the country, but also what makes Texas a little bit different. Why could this work in Texas even without some of the targets we see from the Advanced Clean Trucks Rule, the Advanced Clean Fleet Rule? What can we do here in Texas to create an ecosystem and an industry that supports the development and the growth of medium heavy-duty vehicles and the charging infrastructure? One of the things that we learned that was very, very compelling in that is just what Texas could do today versus what California could do today. And I know, Iga, that's something y'all have experienced and talked about. Just what was your experience when you all were setting up, preparing to launch, I guess, your first location up there in Alliance?
Yeah, maybe I can just talk about that very briefly and then tie it to a bigger vision of how we see the market develop in the state of Texas. So just north of us here, if you follow I-35 north towards Fort Worth, there's a master plan community that was developed in the 80s by a company called Hillwood, which is a very large commercial developer that was led by Ross Perot. And back in the 80s, the Hillwood team built what's now called Alliance, Texas. It's a master planned logistics and distribution center, which is home to over 500 Fortune 100 companies. When they built Perot Field, that has been, I think, home and serving Amazon and FedEx since the 80s. It's about 2 miles across from BNSF. The amount of cargo and freight that flows through there is amazing, first and foremost. And again, when you look at the large corporate representation there, there's no surprise that this organization, Alliance Texas, is now investing in what they're calling the Mobility Innovation Zone. And they're putting in 5G infrastructure, for example, to support future autonomous vehicles. We are partnering with them for a very large charging hub. So we're working very closely. And Phillip is very modest. He doesn't talk about all the work that he's doing to help influence what's happening, at the state capitol, in front of the legislative cycle. He hosted a group of us from industry and OEMs with the governor's staff last week, and I think it's really tremendous how, to a certain degree, we have now an opportunity to influence the market here and do things that maybe we have learned from maybe some of the programs that have been very restrictive in other states. Because Texas, what was the quote that we had the other day? Texas incentivizes, it doesn't legislate, right?
Right.
And so much, I think what we're going to get into a little bit is how do we create an industry that is more focused on innovation, which, by the way, I'm going to steal that from Senator Lee. I don't know if he's in the room. He may be networking. We're really focused on creating partnerships with the large corporations, creating strategic benefits for tenants to move to this area, to create infrastructure that will support their transition to electrification, knowing that it's very, very early. And then the second piece I just want to say, we are the first we see very strong vision for what is happening with the freight industry in the state of Texas. I don't know how many of you are aware of just the tremendous amount of cargo that flows in and out of the port of Houston, goes up to Dallas, goes all the way down to San Antonio, and far west to El Paso. And Texas, through all this work that's being done, Texas Department of Transportation is really creating infrastructure to continue to support the growth of the economy here in the state of Texas. So again, we can come back to this, but it's really important for us to focus on the economic value that we're bringing and the transition that is going to ultimately make sense from an innovative standpoint, an economic, and job creation versus legislation.
Daniel.
So at EMC, the way we see the future of mobility when it comes to MHDVs, we think that we need to support innovation, incentivize the transition, but we also think that we need regulation as well. The carrots and stick philosophy, because I'm a former environment minister myself in Quebec, and I know that when we're talking about incentives, but without any targets or penalty if they're not reached, I've seen in the past that when it's just voluntary, we never reach our targets. It doesn't happen. So, FYI, in Canada, we have adopted what we call a ZEV mandate across Canada for light-duty vehicles, but we will come up with regulation. I learned 15 minutes ago that Canada will have regulation for MHDVs starting in 2025. So this is something happening right now. The consultation is starting in a week. We've had consultations before with the federal government, but this is something that we need to address. And you have to keep in mind that when you are in Canada, there are different, I would say, challenges with the weather. When we reach minus 40, it's a different game than plus 35 here today. I'm talking Celsius here, I'm sorry. But yeah, so this is part of what we have to deal with, because when you're talking about minus 40 degrees, energy consumption can go up to 40% plus, 50% plus sometimes. So it does make a difference.
Absolutely. And Chris, we're talking some about the regional differences that occurs. Again, in the United States, a big focus is on California and other states that are kind of mimicking their laws. We're talking about Texas, Canada. What have you seen from a business perspective, what you've done in your work? What are some regional differences and lessons learned that might be worth that we can talk about here today?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference, again, speaking from maybe a UK and European perspective, is just, obviously they've been doing it a lot longer, in general, and I think they've overcome some of these challenges that we're maybe seeing around the U.S. here. But I I think the biggest thing that I've seen is they have a commitment, right? They've made a commitment to just see it through, and they've done it at scale. And while an EV vehicle might cost 2x times the cost of an ICE vehicle, when they start to do it at scale, the TCO starts to win, right? And they've seen that, and they've now actually become such industrial users of the actual power, that they're able to actually go and demand, for lack of better words, right, lower tariffs, right, which helps then work itself back into the economies of scale side of things. So.
Absolutely. Thank you. And speaking, we have here, I know there's a number of folks who live here in Austin. Who's still here from Austin versus just getting some tacos and stuff? So last week, the city's Zero Waste Advisory Commission adopted a resolution. For a while, the city's Austin Resource Recovery, which manages refuse trucks, garbage trucks, recycling trucks, they're on a path towards electrifying their vehicles, and they adopted a resolution for Environmental Defense Fund to help partner with them in that planning. When you talk about scale, that's one of the first things I came in with. I was meeting with some of the commissioners and some council members, and we got to, by 2030, let's make sure all of the new trucks we buy are electric trucks. And I said, please, no, don't do that. We need a pilot. And so I think the purpose is, let's find 5 to 6 refuse trucks. Let's understand how they work. Let's partner with Austin Energy to make sure we understand the charging needs, the route needs, how these trucks work for the drivers, what the maintenance that still might be required could be. And then let's buy more later down the line. Let's build a transition plan that scales out over time. But costs, and as TCO continue to change, none of that's going to matter if we don't get it right the first time, because a big challenge here is the political resistance, right? Even in the city, it's a tough lift, and in the state of Texas, it absolutely can be a challenge. So understanding, I like to say we try to, in Texas, move at industry's pace as we move down this regulatory path, and in doing so, kind of build a cooperative environment. And one challenge that we've learned that is present in California is there's a lot of different rulemakings that might happen in a silo, or they happen, one after the other, and it's all with good intentions, but they don't necessarily work together. So one thing we're pursuing that's coming from that TxDOT report is, how can we create an electric truck advisory council? How can we develop an advanced truck manufacturing working group? What are the larger oversight that the state can provide that just helps shape and give space for us to do all these things at the same time? Not only work on incentives to deploy trucks, work on personnel to help with modeling. I'm very excited to hear from EPRI after this. They were a key partner in help developing the report, and the whole second chapter in there was co-written by Catherine with EPRI and myself. So that's the part I'd recommend you read if you want to skip through a 51-page report. Right there about page 30, that's where it gets really good. There's just a lot of opportunities for these kinds of things here in Texas. And I kind of ask one more question here. We've had some of these successful projects here, and obviously a lot of this comes down to utilities, and we're going to continue talking about them a lot today. Panel, what are some of the challenges and maybe successful projects you all have seen coordinating, integrating your work with utilities, wherever it is that you do your work?
Well, you want to start? Okay, well, I'll start. So because of the fact that, we're working in coordination within EMC, between utilities and, manufacturers and fleets, like, what 7Gen does, what we are seeing is that we are sharing a lot of information, because what we are finding out is that it's one thing to bring up a good product to market, but if we don't educate everybody around the table to make sure that they understand what's in it, the truck drivers, we have to educate them on EVs. I mean, it goes down to that, and the mechanics, because if we don't do that, we could have a great product, but it's going to be a disaster.
And that was a big challenge in Illinois. It was some of the truck drivers that weren't ready for the app rule, and that's why.
Somebody came in with, a bunch of electric taxi cabs in Montreal. He gave them to cab drivers 5 years ago. And he just gave them the cars, and we went down to -30, -35, and it was a total disaster. The guy didn't sleep for months because he had to explain to the cab drivers how the vehicles worked. So for me, this is a key challenge. And one thing I would like to say is, we have to make sure that we have market predictability. And to me, this is so important. And that's why we are pushing for regulation, but also innovation, and incentives, and education, and infrastructure. All of this goes together. There's not one silver bullet. All of this is intertwined.
Absolutely, absolutely. Iga.
Yeah, I have to say, I think, look, every utility in this country, and I'm sure around the world, is dealing with this. And everybody's going through recognizing that this is a challenge. And we know that it's not a question of if anymore, it's a question of when, right? And so, I think the utilities in California from each and every single one of the regions have been working really diligently trying to figure out how to ramp up as quickly as possible and plan for this. There are more challenges, I would say, with some of the regions in Southern California because they have been stressed beyond, I think, with the questions of what's going to happen from a regulatory standpoint, preparing, not preparing. But across the board, from us that are looking for a lot of power, our sites, the sites that we develop are on average, 4, 6, 8 megawatts, right? So that is a very large amount of power that is needed. We build these sites. Think of them as sort of sophisticated, truck stops, but they are being designed to support hundreds of trucks at any given, point, maybe not all at the same time. What's really unique, I think, about medium and heavy duty charging versus passenger vehicle charging is we really do get to work very closely with our clients in being able to anticipate the demand, and there's a lot of energy management that comes into it in really understanding what the operational needs are of these fleets. Are they coming in during the day? It would be lovely to be able to have the drivers drop the trucks off at 3 o'clock to charge. If we can plan for it. Majority of, especially the drayage trucks, which are the ones that are moving the large containers from ports or distribution centers, for the most part, they're done at the end of the night and they have a free shift and they can park. So this is very different than long haul, trucking, where the vehicles are running 400, 800 miles on any given day. That's a very different business case that we need to plan for, with a lot of route on route charging to be able to provide infrastructure every 150 miles, 200 miles in order to be able to support heavy haul, long corridor type of movement. When we think of where the technology is today and what can we do, it's really trying to address very particular parts, specific segments that are ready for electrification now. Not every truck is going to be able to actually perform the way we need it to be able to just drop in for substitution for an ICE truck. I have to say, in Texas, it's been a pleasure working with the utilities, and the conversations have been, how much power do you want and when? And part of it is because of the fact that the way we're planning for our, again, these are heavy duty, medium heavy, medium duty trucks. A lot of them are charging at night. We have a lot of wind at night. It's a lot less expensive. It is available. So, something to definitely consider. And it's and we have to just be very conscious of which lanes, which trucks, which applications. And EV is not going to solve everything today.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris.
Yeah, I know we're running short on time. I'll be a little bit quick here. I think part of our success has been just coming to the table with a utility and meeting them where they are at the end of the day, and having a conversation about what we need. And we've actually found that the utility will bring the power, and they want to bring the power, but we might have to work within some of the restrictions that they have from a scheduling perspective. And so that falls into the technology, right, that helps allow some of the scheduling and some of the utilization aspects. And then you add on top of that, I think, when you can bring, say, a microgrid solution to the table, right, to offset some of the power needs, whether it be during the peak hours and things of that nature. I think some of those things combined ease some of the challenges that are having, that we're having with utilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And EDF should have a study out, I believe, by the end of the month. We've been working with Centerpoint and others to look at the cost benefit, basically, of this. And what you can find is that since a lot of this truck charging can be done overnight or at different times, they'll make more money by charging these trucks. And you could potentially lower rates for customers across the scale. So there's a lot more we could be discussing on this. I appreciate you taking your side event networking time to come listen to the opportunities here with trucks. Again, 100 passenger vehicles would have to be removed from the road to reach an equivalent pollution reduction for moving a single Class 8 truck. So I think there's great opportunity in this space. I'd like to thank my panel very much for joining me up here, and we'll grab questions here on the side as we move through the rest of our day. Thank you all for being here.